Welcome back to the 88 Sports Report presented by the Cumberland Gap Tavern. I'm Adam Plyler with Dustin McCoy and Adam Haley. And our special guest for the evening, Joe Cox, author of 100 Things Wildcats Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. Joe, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Good to talk with you.
No problem. And, Joe, is it true that you've known Dustin for a long time?
I've known Dustin for almost 20 years now, since about 1994.
Yes, we are quite old.
Yes.
This is the time to share stories.
Absolutely. So, Joe, this book that you have out, 100 Things Wildcats Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die, tell us how you came up with all these things, because there are a lot of interesting things that, I mean, I'm not a Wildcat fan, but I know a lot about the Kentucky basketball, and there are some things that I didn't even know about in this book.
Well, that's what we hope to do. We wanted to try to put something together that the hardcore fan would look at and go, hey, I didn't realize that, but yet somebody who's not a big UK fan could read it and get the basic history. And my co-author Ryan Clark and I, we kind of, fought back and forth on various things to put in or leave out, but we somehow whittled it down to 100. And we tried to include some different stuff instead of just players, coaches, teams. We wanted to have kind of an idea of what makes UK basketball special. So you get Ashley Judd, or the guy who built the miniature Rupp Arena at his house, things like that.
Yeah, I read that. Have you been there yet yourself?
I have not been there. Ryan wrote that particular one. He wrote 50 of them, and I wrote 50 of them, so flip a coin.
Was it a random lottery style to see who got to write which part?
I actually picked him. Ryan was incredibly generous. I helped him come up with a list, and he said, pick 50. So I picked 50. There's really no rhyme or reason to it, but that's how it went.
So, Joe, while you were writing this book, what was your favorite thing to kind of reminisce or to write about?
I tended to like some of the old historical stuff, and one that I'm particularly proud of is the chapter on Bear Bryant. And people go, wait a minute, it's Kentucky basketball. What's it got to do with Bear Bryant? Well, Bear Bryant coached football at Kentucky once upon a time, and the popular story that he himself told was that he just felt unappreciated at UK. There was a year where football and basketball, if you can believe it, both won the SEC championship. And Bryant told the story that the university gave Rupp a new car, and they gave him a watch. It's a great story, and it shows, UK putting basketball first. It's a great story except for one small thing, and that it's just not true. What I found out in researching was that actually, I think the next year, there was no car for Rupp, by the way. The next year, the governor put a drive together and bought a new car for Bear Bryant to try to keep him in Kentucky. So, it's all in the story, I guess.
Just out of curiosity, since we're talking about Bear Bryant, and I've been discussing this here recently with all the different coaching changes that's been going on in the Southeastern Conference, and I'll ask you, since you're, I guess, a Kentucky fan and I'm a Tennessee fan, and I can do some hypothesis at this point. What do you think how do you think the culture would have been changed if, say, Bear Bryant had stayed at Kentucky as opposed to going to Texas A&M or Alabama?
It's hard to say. And one of the things I did try to point out in that Bryant story is that I think Bryant left UK because he saw the writing on the wall. UK, for whatever reason, had passed kind of an in-house rule that they would only recruit 5 or 6, I don't even remember the number now, but a handful of out-of-state players. And Kentucky high school football then, as now, really wasn't deep enough to provide you with an SEC team. And I think, for whatever reason, he saw that and thought, how in the world can I win here? And he got out. And under those restrictions, I'm not sure even Bear Bryant could have won in Kentucky.
Yeah, that would have been difficult. I want to jump around a little bit. I think my most interesting thing I found that you guys wrote together was the undefeated no national tournament team, because I forget where you said the reporter was from, actually pointed out that the 3 players weren't eligible because they'd already graduated. That never would have happened today, but with all how the rules are set up. But what was the state reaction generally for UK fans?
Well, I think there was obviously a great deal of discomfort about it. I mean, what happened basically was you took 3 guys who, because there was a season where UK was barred from playing basketball, they were kind of like redshirt seniors, except that they had gone on and graduated, and thus the NCAA says, you can't play in the NCAA tournament. So they did have the undefeated season. They won a playoff with LSU, who was also undefeated in the conference, to win the SEC. And then it was put to a vote. Do you go to the NCAA tournament and play without those three guys or not? And legend has it that the vote was to go on and play. And I think the quote that I have in the book is that Rupp said something about how he wasn't going to take a bunch of turds to the NCAA tournament. And that was the end of the discussion.
That sounds about right.
So if you have a question for Joe, give us a call here at 423-869-6023. We just found out that our phones aren't connected.
Yeah, so hopefully if you call, we'll be able to actually answer.
Absolutely. So give us a call, again, 869-6023. And for everyone listening out in Webland, it's 423-869-6023. Now, Joe, this book's very interesting. There's a lot of great facts in this book. How did you guys find all these facts?
Well, Ryan, it's his fourth book, so he'd been around. He'd interviewed some of these guys. He had more of the primary contacts. Me, I'm a lawyer in my day job. This was book one for me. I'm just a UK fan who's got a bookshelf full of UK books. And, I'd start to write a chapter sometimes, and I'd go to look something up. And sometimes I'd find one thing in one book and something else in another, or sometimes, I'd look for one fact and I'd find another fact which I liked better than the one I was looking for, and I'd use it. So, I really just had a good library. That was my excuse, and it helps with the wife. That way I can say when I buy, a couple more old UK basketball books that it's, it's for research purposes. It's not just because I want to read them. So.
Absolutely. What makes a Kentucky basketball experience different from all other college basketball?
Well, the short answer to that is wins, but the longer answer, I think, is just the importance that it's been invested with over time. This past Saturday, Ryan and I were at the Kentucky Book Fair in Frankfurt, and we were selling and signing books, and it was just really amazing to me, Adam. I know this, but I kind of take it for granted. How many people came up and said, yeah, I want to buy this book for my brother down in Texas who's a big UK fan, or, my cousin up in Montana who's a big UK fan, or my son in Virginia. UK basketball fandom really knows no borders. And like I said, I knew that, but I was kind of humbled on Saturday to get a first-person demonstration of that.
But I was actually thinking of something similar today when I finished up the last 7 on the list of 100 this morning. And UK fandom doesn't really get the credit it deserves as being a national phenomenon.
Because I would agree. I think you're absolutely right. People on the outside think it's just this little narrow regional thing. But, a couple months ago, my family went down to Gulf Shores, Alabama on vacation. And my wife and I were cracking up because it was like every 10 miles, here was a car with a UK plate on the side, or a family in it all decked out in UK gear, all the way from Kentucky down to the Gulf Coast. It was UK people.
I got a question for you, and it's really weird, especially in the Calipari stage, that we don't see Senior Day a lot. And one chapter that stuck out to me was the Kentucky basketball Senior Day. Did you experience that at one time? And talk about that if you have.
That's I actually haven't. That one was Ryan's chapter, but a good backstory on that one that I happen to remember. His wife is not a big basketball fan, but he took her to Senior Day, and I guess it was Chuck Hayes' senior year. And, Ryan, like me, when you're married to somebody who thinks you're a lunatic, you try to explain yourself, and maybe on some level that's what our book's about. But, his wife was a good sport. She went to the game, and he looks over when they're singing My Old Kentucky Home, and Chuck Hayes is crying, and his wife is crying. And, that kind of speaks to that experience. It is one of the downsides of the Calipari years that we're probably not going to see a lot of that, but so it goes.
In your opinion, who do you think is probably one of the bigger rivals that Kentucky has in basketball? Would it be Louisville? Is it maybe in North Carolina? Is it somebody within the conference?
Well, it's changed so much over the years. In the modern era, I would probably take Louisville. But, of course, you read the book, you probably know the stat now that the team that Kentucky has both beaten the most and lost to the most is the Tennessee Volunteers.
Now, we're obviously talking basketball in that one because they don't use they don't use a wide receiver for that one.
Yeah, they're one our advantage. Yeah.
I want to give you some backstory for poor Adam Haley here. He had, up until last year, had not been alive when Kentucky beat Tennessee at football.
Yeah.
So,
I can believe that.
So we theorized, and until this season, I dashed my hopes that there was a small child born somewhere in Kentucky that was going to go 25 years without seeing Tennessee beat Kentucky at football.
It's still possible.
It's entirely possible. You know, I was very emotional when it finally happened last year because I am a big football fan, and you know, kind of my introduction to it in 1994. I was down in Knoxville when an atrociously bad Kentucky team, maybe worse than the current Kentucky football team, played Peyton Manning in Tennessee, and it was 52-0. And my predominant memory is that UK got a first down at some point in the first half, and the band played the fight song.
Yeah, there were many of those, and to kind of keep it back on basketball, a couple of times in the book you mentioned the 101-40 game, and I'm sure you've driven back and forth to Lexington enough to see that was, I think it's still spray painted on that one bridge.
Yes, that was one of the things I was thinking about when I wrote that. And, you know, I moved here not long by here. I really mean there to the tri-state area. Not long after that game was played, and I remember seeing that 101-40 over the years. Yeah.
See, and I always thought that score was in retaliation because UT beat Kentucky at Knoxville that day, basically on free throws from
Houston.
Allen Houston.
I'm not going to go sour grapes here, but if you pull out the tape, I'm pretty sure Houston violated the free throw lane on the winning basket. But hey, long ago and far away.
Yeah, that was my one good UT basketball memory. So let me clinch onto that as hard as I can.
There you go. Hey, it's in the book. You know, it happened the way you say.
Yeah.
Now, since we're back on UK basketball, I have to ask, because you're an avid UK fan, I've actually seen some shirts in different places down here that are selling. Do you still hate Christian Laettner?
You know, I can't really say I did. I pretty well did until the last couple of years, but I think one of the things we talk about in the book is how they had that charity game during the NBA lockout, and Laettner came back and coached the Villains team, and at one point in the game, you know, went out on the floor and got down on his hands and knees and wiped the court. And I think he's got a sense of humor about it. For a long time, he didn't, and that made it hard to deal with. But the last few years, I think he's become a little more secure as, you know, the guy everybody loves to hate, and bizarrely, that makes him harder to hate.
Joe, it's AP here. I got a question for you. Going back, I know the Calipari era is just getting underway, but going back to the Rupp era and now the Calipari era, which do you see better for UK athletics?
You know, it's hard to say just because it's such a different environment today than it was then. And the other thing is, give me 5 years and I might have an answer to that. I didn't necessarily expect Calipari to turn it around this much, this quickly. Now, can he stay there? That's the million-dollar question. I don't see any reason he can't, provided we stay within the good graces of the NCAA. And, you know, who wants to bet on that?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the NCAA, and I think one of the best things in the book is how you really clarify all the haters, the Bob Knights and such, that really rag on Calipari for, allegedly, and I put this in quotes, putting 2 schools on probation when it really had nothing to do with him.
Well, I'm glad that you appreciate it, because here's another random side diversion from me. At the book fair, we talked to Valerie Still, who is the greatest UK women's player of all time, and she was picking on us mercilessly because somehow we left her out of the book, which, you know, she outscored Dan Issel. If you count men's and women's hoops together, she's UK's all-time leading scorer and rebounder still. And you know, we'd about got her calm. She was almost calmed down, and she's flipping through the book, and she goes, "Bob Knight? Why is Bob Knight in here? I'm not in here, and Bob Knight's in here." So we tried to explain that it wasn't that we were saying anything good about Bob Knight. I'm not sure who would at this point, but you know, I don't know how well it worked. So.
Yeah, there was a lot of chapters where I read the title first, and I'm like, okay, like the Bob Knight reaction, but Freedom Hall, for example, just stuff that you wouldn't consider just on the surface looking at UK basketball.
Well, again, the idea was to, on one hand, give that surface history, but on the other hand, dig a little deeper and, give those nuggets to people who would appreciate, who were reading kind of at a deeper level.
Okay, like I said, I finished the last 7 this morning. How was the choice made to make Gillespie number 100?
He was always on the list, and he was always really low on the list. And the only regret I have is while we figured that he was going to flame out in Texas, we didn't realize it was going to happen this fast. So, the book doesn't include his firing just because when we wrote it, we knew he'd get fired, but we didn't know it would happen in a year.
Yeah. So. Well, I remember there's the little shadow box portion. It's like, well, you could almost tell that you guys had held out as long as you could. I was like, something bad's going to happen because of this man, but we don't know what.
Yeah, that was very much the atmosphere. It was just, come on, Billy, either you're, do it before we go to press or hold off for another year. But yet again, as a Kentucky fan, Billy Gillespie thwarts me. So.
Yeah.
He had to be number 1 so he could pay the tab for the other 99.
Right.
Yeah, hopefully he gets his problems straightened out, which at this point I doubt.
Yeah, I think there's a good basketball coach lurking under there, but, we're kind of 7 layers of problems at this point.
Yeah.
So, Joe, since you know Dustin since 1994, why don't you give us a couple funny stories about Dustin here?
Epic Dustin story that I wish I had video for is about 1997. If you can remember back, I know you guys are young. You were probably like in kindergarten, but Dustin and I were, I guess we were seniors at J. Frank White, and Brad Wilder went to J. Frank White then. I don't know if you guys know Brad, but Brad is like 6'5", 240. I mean, he's a big dude, and always was. And I played baseball with Brad, so I would good-naturedly, kind of wrestle around with him. I was a senior; he was a freshman. He was still
full-on tackling.
Yeah, liked to tackle him, but he was still much bigger and much stronger. This one particular day, I jump on Brad's back, and Brad just starts swinging around, and he's swinging me around. And Dustin is kind of standing there, apparently at unclose range, watching all this. And I fly around the first time, and my feet kick him in the groin. And he doubles over and grabs his crotch, and his head goes down to about belly level. And the second time around, I kick him in the head. So, I hope that one will survive.
That's gold. That's gold.
That is gold, because I can picture this. Joe, I have no idea what you look like, but I could picture this.
I wish there was video. If there had been, phones with cameras, then we would have broken every YouTube record in the world.
Yeah. Now, I don't remember if it was you exactly, but keeping on the Brad Wilder theme, wasn't he also thrown through a wall at one point?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. That sounds right.
Yeah, there was a backpack-shaped hole down at the campus center.
So is this like something with your class that goes through walls?
It's happened here, too.
Dustin's destroyed a couple walls here.
He's a destructive guy. I don't know how you guys are holding out.
We just keep building walls.
So, Joe, let's get back onto the topic of your book here. Well, not really your book, just Kentucky athletics in general. When do you think Kentucky football will be great again?
Well, the cynic in me says never. The optimist in me says whenever they buck up and pay the millions of dollars that a big-time coach is going to require. I'm 32, and Kentucky hasn't had a winning SEC season in my lifetime, and that's kind of hard to digest because how many 32s am I going to string together? Not a lot. So we'll see.
Who do you think will be the next head coach at Kentucky?
If I were a gambler, I'd probably guess Sonny Dykes. I'm hoping a little more on the Bobby Petrino line. We've kind of tempted the NCAA once with Calipari. Maybe we can tempt fate twice and live to tell about it with Petrino and his off-field issues.
It just depends on how good UK's volleyball team is, I would suppose.
That's right.
I don't know. Dykes is my safe guess. I'd hope for Petrino, but if being a UK football fan has taught me anything, it's that it'll either be the safe hire or the hire who nobody has ever heard of.
So what you're saying is Derek Dooley is coming to Lexington?
I've heard that suggested. Jamie Vaught is real big on Phil Fulmer, and I just don't see it. Phil was a great coach, but Phil's 62 and he hasn't coached in 4 years, and it's kind of Rich Brooks II at best there. So I don't buy that one. But that would be about the crazy level that UK would work on at this point.
See, Petrino doesn't need a volleyball team up there. They have cheerleaders at UK, and that's all he needs.
That is true. They were at their heyday in my time at UK.
He'd probably get in trouble if he messed up anything with the cheerleading team. I mean, they win national championships. It's like, what is it, Tuesday? Oh, let's win another national championship. That's just the way they roll. If anybody notices such things, I forget how many. I mean, they're at like 16 national titles or something. It seemed like that.
Several in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always Penn State versus Kentucky in a national championship.
Yeah.
Going back to basketball, we talk about men's basketball all the time. We're talking about UK football because of the coaching change. Not to be outdone, the Lady Wildcats are quickly at the top of the conference right now. I mean, they have taken over where the Lady Vols were and are running right now.
It's true, and in all fairness to Valerie Still, I told her at the book fair, I said, you give Matthew Mitchell about 5 more years, and we'll probably be in position to write a 100 things about UK women's hoops. I'm amazed at what he's done, and you'd like to see a football coach come in who could change the culture the way he has, because the two programs are on pretty similar footing. UK women's basketball was a mediocre team in a phenomenal league, and I'm amazed by the dude. I think he's a great coach.
Yeah. Well, I guess anything else you wanted to say? Well, no. We got to. Where can people get the book?
Somebody needs to go on a field trip over there to the Middlesboro Mall and tell me if they've got it.
I was there today.
Okay.
And I did not see it. I did not. I just did a quick cursory glance to see if they had it out in any place of prominence, but.
Well,
I will say that bookstore is not known for getting current books out at top flight speeds.
That's true. So step one is let's storm the Middlesboro Mall with torches and pitchforks and demand that they stock it.
That mall will be gone in no time.
Probably so. In the meanwhile, you can go to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, any place like that. One thing I do want to mention is to check out our Facebook. You can buy books from myself on there, because they'll be nice and signed. And that's www.facebook.com/100thingswildcats. And we'll also list signings on there. And I'm hopeful to have a signing or two over in Eastern Kentucky, even talking with a former player whose name I don't want to say in case it doesn't happen, but might be in that neck of the woods before too long.
That'd be good to actually see you. I haven't actually seen you in person in forever.
Yeah.
There's also e-readers, too. I believe I saw that on the Facebook.
What's that?
It's also on, like, Nooks and Kindles?
Yeah. If you do the e-reader thing, whichever one you like, they will sell it to you that way.
All right, Joel, thanks for being on our show tonight, and we appreciate you answering all the questions we had for you.
Guys, a pleasure talking to you. If you want to pick on UK football anymore, just holler back at me.
All right, stay on the line. I'll pick up off air for just a second.
Joe Cox with 100 Things Wildcats fans should know and do before they die. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about college football, and the 6 bowls in the pool for college football are in for the playoffs, so we're going to talk about that when we come back on the 88 Sports Report, presented by the Cumberland Gap Tavern.